Edgewood University. Year 1, Episode 10. Choice. When it comes to choices, make sure they are your own instead of bending to someone else's wishes. Her magic faded, and Connor caught Layla before she hit the tree. She wrapped her arm around his shoulders, and her hand slid across the back of his neck. He searched her eyes, and another scream echoed through the forest. "Can we come back to this later?" She breathed and nodded. He stared at her lips, and she shook her head. "Great idea," he said. Layla kissed his cheek and grabbed his hand, and she and Connor ran toward the school. They ran out of the woods, and Bailey, Cassidy, Faith, Cody, and Alex ran toward them. "Layla? Connor?" exclaimed Faith. "What happened?" As Connor and Cassidy shook her head, noticing he and Layla were holding hands. The schoolyard was filled with terrified, screaming, and crying students, and everyone huddled in groups. "Not sure. We were out by the tree waiting for you two when we heard the screams," said Faith. Students continued to run out of the school, screaming, and everyone looked at each other. Without a word, Connor let go of Layla's hand, ran into the crowd, and picked up one of the male students. "What happened?" he asked, and the boy looked at him nervously. "There's something in the building. Something attacked a girl in the Great Hall," he cried, shaking in fear. Layla saw Connor and ran toward him. "Layla!" exclaimed Bailey as she, Faith, Cassidy, Alex, and Cody chased after her. "What? What did it look like?" Connor growled as Layla reached him, touching his muscular arm. "Connor," she whispered with glowing crimson eyes, and a calming sensation washed over him. He blinked, put the trembling student down, and looked at her in awe. Their eyes shimmered, and she smiled gently. "It's okay. We'll figure this out. Let's not lose our cool, okay?" she asked softly, and he only nodded. How did she calm him down so fast? He wanted to pull her into his arms, feel her body against his, and submit to her. He shook his head, and she smirked, squeezing his arm. "We'll talk about that later," she whispered, and he inhaled sharply, searching her eyes. What did she mean? Connor only nodded, and Layla blew a breath, feeling the calm wash over her. "Lie?" called Tyler from the steps, and Layla looked through the crowd. He waved her over, and she nodded, looking back at Connor. "Stay with your sister," she said as her hand slipped away from his arm, and she made her way through the crowd. Connor watched her disappear in the group of students, and the warmth of her touch lingered. "Tyler? What's going on?" Layla asked, reaching Tyler. He grabbed her hand and pulled her through the crowd and into the building. "Are you crazy? There's something killing people in here," she exclaimed, pulling her hand away. "Lay, listen. It's Peter. He escaped, and now he's attacking students in the school," he said, grabbing his hair, and she looked at him suspiciously. "Did he just escape?" Tyler looked at her gravely and shook his head. "He escaped a couple of days ago," he said, and Layla's eyebrows shot down in anger. "And you didn't think to tell me." "Connor was brave enough to tell me. He thought I deserved to know since that fucking monster attacked me and turned me into this." She snapped, not thinking, and crossed her arms. Layla saw the rage in Tyler's eyes and didn't care. "No, because me and my mother are going to take care of him," he growled, and she raised her eyebrows. "What do you mean, take care of him?" she asked, eyeing him suspiciously. "Tyler?" yelled Maya, running down the hallway, and Layla stared at them. Tyler blew a breath and looked at his mother. "Mom, everyone's outside," he said, and she nodded. She looked at Layla for a moment and then turned her attention toward her son. "Good. We have him cornered. We have to go." Layla stared at Maya and Tyler in disbelief and shook her head. "No, you can't do this," she said with tears streaming down her face, and she grabbed Tyler's wrist. He gave her an apologetic look and rubbed her cheek. "I'm sorry, Lay. I have to go," he said, pulling away, but she didn't let go. "What are you going to do?" she asked, searching his eyes, and his eyes started glowing. "Whatever I have to do to keep you safe." He pulled away, and Layla watched him and his mother run down the hall. Layla walked out of the school building slowly and was stuck in a daze as she passed through the crowd of screaming and injured students. It started raining, and the students huddled in groups. She ignored everyone, walking away from the crowd and toward the shimmering tree. She felt disoriented and disconnected. Layla walked up to the tree hit her knees, and stared at the ground. Was Tyler going to kill his father? No, he might have been a werewolf, but he wasn't a monster, was he? We are going to take care of him. Tyler's words echoed inside her head. None of this made any sense. The red-orange, flaming dragon wings appeared and wrapped around Layla, making a see-through protective shield. She closed her eyes and felt the fire magic burn through her veins. Faith, Connor, Cassidy, Cody, Bailey, and Alex watched Layla and ran toward her. "What do we do?" asked Cody, and Connor thought momentarily. "I have an idea," he said, and walked toward Layla. "Layla," called a deep voice, and Layla opened her glowing eyes. "Layla, hello, my gorgeous friend. How are you doing in there?" asked Connor, and she looked at him. She didn't say a word, but the flames grew brighter and shot up into the air. The student body gasped, huddled in small groups, and backed away. "Listen, why don't you put those things away and talk to me?" Layla searched his eyes, listened to his strong, steady heartbeat, and realized he wasn't afraid of her. In the back of her mind, she knew she and Connor were destined to be together. But how could she trust a whore, liar, and someone who didn't give a shit about himself? She realized the man had done nothing wrong to her, except his little games at the bar, but he never lied to her or tried to hurt her. He came to her when he found out what Tyler and his mother were hiding from her. Should she trust the beautiful, muscular man? "Hey, Layla, we're all here for you," said Bailey nervously, and Layla turned her glowing stare on her. Bailey swallowed hard and backed away, and Alex put his hand on her shoulders. She looked at him, and he smiled. "Just give them a moment. Connor seems to know what he's doing," he said, and she only nodded. Connor saw her reaction toward the mind fairy and cleared his throat. "Hey, Lay, look at me," he said calmly, and Layla looked at him. "That's it, babe. Listen to the sound of my voice," he said and growled softly. She listened to his deep voice and felt the rumble in her chest, and the burning sensation faded. She looked at him with glowing crimson eyes and spread her wings wider as the flames burned hotter. He swallowed hard and looked at them. "Beautiful," he whispered, and the burning sensation faded even more. Layla looked at Connor, and he held her eyes. Cassidy frowned, feeling impatient, and she stepped toward Layla. "Layla, calm down," yelled Cassidy, and Layla glared at her as the magic started burning hotter. "Why do you keep secrets and lie?" She growled distortedly, and the wings flared with giant, bright flames. Cassidy swallowed hard, stepped back, and Cody pulled her against him. "Let's just let my brother take care of this," he said, and she nodded. Faith looked at her older brother, and Connor raised his hand. He looked at Layla and growled softly. She looked at him, and the burn subsided. He blew a breath and slowly reached his hand toward her. "I've never lied to you or kept anything from you. I've always been honest and answered your questions, even though sometimes you can be a pain in the ass," he said, and saw her crack a smile. He sighed in relief and gave her a gentle look. "Take my hand, babe. Let me help you. I will never lie to you. You deserve to know everything and anything that involves you," he said convincingly. Layla searched his eyes as hers faded, and she hugged her knees as tears rolled down her cheeks. "I can't trust anyone, not even myself," she whispered. Connor glanced at his sister, and Faith nodded, slowly moving toward Layla. She looked at the flaming wings, swallowed hard, and reached her hand through them. She felt the magic's warmth, but it didn't burn her. She sighed in relief and knelt beside Layla. "Honey, you're not alone. I have a hard time trusting people too. However, I believe the power within you trusts my brother and me 100%. Layla looked at Connor and Faith. Faith smiled, and Layla bit her lower lip. "It's okay. Take his hand," Faith whispered. Layla looked at Connor with glowing eyes, and his eyes began glowing the same crimson color. "Take my hand," he whispered, and she searched his eyes. A tiny flame appeared behind the gold rings, and her eyebrows rose. The flame called to her, telling her to surrender to the alpha before her. Caught in a daze, Layla reached a shaky hand toward Connor's, and the tiny fire danced happily. "I'm right here, Lay. Take my hand." Connor growled softly. His fingertips brushed her palm, and he slowly closed his hand around hers. A calm washed over them, and their eyes shimmered. Faith felt a gentle push, and she stepped back. Layla's wings wrapped around her and Connor, making a protective barrier, and ribbons of fire magic danced around their bodies. Faith's eyes widened, and Bailey sighed happily as she looked at them with glowing purple eyes. "They're bonding. I can feel it. It's so magical." She sighed, and Cassidy looked at Faith wide-eyed. "Your brother's a hellhound?" Faith shook her head. "No, he's a werewolf. We were born werewolves," she said. "Well, according to the stories, a hellcat only bonds with a hellhound. That means our brother must be a hellhound," said Cody in disbelief. Faith stared at her brother and sighed, shrugging. "Maybe that's why Connor never settled down with a girl before. They weren't the one. Maybe this is a good thing," suggested Alex, and Bailey agreed. The flaming wings disappeared, and Layla's and Connor's eyes faded. They stared at each other, and Layla blew a shaky breath. "What happened?" she whispered. Connor pulled his hand back, blinked, and shook his head. "I'm not sure." Cassidy and Bailey smiled and walked toward Layla. They knelt beside her, and Faith ran to her brother. "Oh, my big brother is growing up so fast," she teased, squeezing his cheeks, and he pushed her away. "What are you talking about?" Faith laughed and crouched before him. "You two just bonded," she said, standing, and Connor got to his feet. "What? Wait, that would mean..." "Yes, you're not just some mediocre alpha of a pack. You're a hellhound, and clearly, the hellcat has chosen her mate." Faith interrupted. Connor blew a breath and watched Cassidy and Bailey pull Layla to her feet. "So, what does that mean?" "Me and Connor bonding," asked Layla, stumbling, and Cassidy steadied her. "You imprinted on each other. No matter what happens, you two will always have an unbreakable bond. You will protect each other and each other's packs," explained Cody, and his older brother shook his head in disbelief. Layla chose him. He felt he was undeserving of the Hellcat Dragon Spark's choice, but now Connor knew he had to change his ways and become a better man. But how? He was an old alpha set in his ways and didn't know how to change. "One big happy family," said Bailey and Alex Cody, and Cassidy smiled. "I don't have a pack," said Layla. "Yeah, and there's no way I'm a hellhound," stated Connor. Cassidy made a face and looked at Layla. "You have a pack. You have us," she said, and gave Connor a smug look. "Unless you were one of the Sparks, and they're only pure of heart, so you couldn't be. According to the books in history class, a hellcat only bonds with a hellhound," she said, and Layla wondered why her friend had such hostility toward the gorgeous man. She looked at him and smiled, and then her smile faded, remembering Tyler. She looked at the school and inhaled a sharp breath. "There's nothing wrong with being a hellhound. We can talk all about this later. Right now, we have to stop them," she said, taking a step and pitching forward. She fell on her hands and knees and hung her head, feeling weak. "Layla!" exclaimed Connor, and he knelt beside her. "Stop who?" he asked, pulling her hair from her face. "Tyler and Maya," she breathed. Connor, Faith, Bailey, Cassidy, Cody, and Alex looked at each other, and Connor looked at Layla, rubbing her cheek. "What? Why, honey? What's going on?" he asked. Connor pulled Layla to her feet, but she lost her grip and fell forward. He caught her before she hit the ground and pulled her against his chest. Layla blew a long breath and rested her head against him. "Tyler's going to kill his father and take the alpha power," she breathed, and Cassidy's hands flew to her mouth. "Tyler wouldn't do something like that. That's his father," she exclaimed. Connor stumbled, feeling weak, and Layla wrapped her arms around his waist, trying to steady him. "His mother's making him do it. I know it's going to destroy him." She cried weakly and hung her head. Bailey swallowed hard and straightened. "What do we have to do?" she asked bravely. "Can I have your attention, please?" called Maya, and everyone looked at the school. The headmistress stood on the steps with Tyler, and blood dripped from the side of his face and arm, and his shirt was torn and bloodied. Layla stared at her best friend with his now red glowing eyes and huffed a sob. "We're too late," she cried, and Connor hugged her. "The threat has been eliminated. You may return to your dormitories. Classes will resume in the morning, but the staff is always here if you need to talk. Please get some rest and get your affairs in order," said Maya, and she and Tyler went back inside the school. Layla grabbed a fistful of Connor's shirt and huffed a sob. hanging her head. "Damn it," she breathed, and Connor lifted her chin, searching her eyes. "We will figure this out together," he said, and she only nodded, sniffing. "Come on, let's get you to your room. We need to rest," he said, rubbing her cheek, and Layla nodded. Connor and Layla took a step, stumbled, and fell onto the ground. Alex and Cody walked toward Connor, and Cody crouched before his older brother. "Hey, bro, let us help," he said, and Connor nodded. "Thanks." He breathed, and he and Alex helped Connor to his feet. Faith and Cassidy helped Layla, and they headed into the